effect, I'm just reading from the screen here, but yeah, £5,000. It's got to be extracurricular, and it's got to be about computing or technology. So it's not digital literacy, it's not internet safety. The fund, in fact, so Digital Xtra fund is, I'm trying to remember, I think it was about £100,000 last year, I think they managed to pull together, and that's donated by sponsors from industry, including, I think, BT are one of the big sponsors this year. Microbit support it as well. So they get funding from different sectors. I think Scottish Government, Education Scotland, I don't think we fund it, but work in partnership to help design the fund and the application process and things. So lots of minds behind that. What I've put on the slides there is links to the last 2 impact reports, and you can see the sorts of projects that people have been successful in applying for. I was fortunate enough last year, I had the opportunity to sit on the application judging panel, and the criteria are really clear, and I don't mean to criticise anyone, but the criteria are there, but it was amazing reading so many of them, and you're reading a fantastic sounding project, and you think, this is great, this is really going to benefit the learners, but there's parts missing, and it's like small details, but again, it's a scoring process. So if you score that, doesn't matter how good the project is, if it doesn't have a time-sensitive agenda or plan to that, then it's got to be marked down. And what I found from that experience was universities and colleges, for example, who I believe usually have grant writing teams, they're really good at writing grants. And what tends to be the case, I think, in schools is we probably find out about it quite late, probably about April time, or we find out about it just now and we go, I'm going to apply for that, but there's so many things to juggle when you're in school, and it maybe slips a wee bit, and then you write it with a couple of days to go, and somebody's perhaps given it their full attention. So that's where I think some of those details get lost, and it's a real shame, because I say you're looking at fantastic projects across Scotland, and you have to mark them down because they don't have wee details in there. So what I'm going to do today is go through some of the groups and things that you're looking for, and what those criteria are. So as I said there, you can have a look at the website and see who the partners are and what they're looking to do with it, and further details. But the key parts there are, it's computing or technology, £5,000, and as well, it doesn't have to be the whole cost of the project. So if your project was going to cost £10,000, you can ask for £5,000 from Digital Xtra if you've secured that funding from somewhere else. And again, it's looked upon favourably if you can say, we have £5,000 from a partner and we would like Digital Xtra to cover the other part. I think it's looked upon less favourably, but not unfavourably, if you've not secured the other funding. If you're saying we're looking for that funding from here, but again, Digital Xtra would perhaps commit to that and say, we can only commit the £5,000 if you definitely get the other funding. We can't give you the £5,000 for part of project. And again, that's something to consider when you plan your project as well. If your project depends on, say, the full £10,000, Digital Xtra wouldn't give you, if I remember correct, that might, but it's looked upon less favourably if you're saying, well, I've only got that £5,000 and I don't have the other £5,000. It's very difficult for them to release the £5,000 because your application wasn't for part of a project, it was for a whole of a project. So you could, I think, if I'm right, there might be guidance about that I think you can perhaps say, this is how I would envisage scaling it up. So if I got £2,000, I would do this, and if I get £5,000, I would do this, and if I had 10, I would be doing this. But they are looking for you to be able to say where your funding is coming from. See, I was able to be a part of the panel that judged the evaluations last year, but everybody else in that room was from industry. I think maybe one or two were further education, but nearly everybody else who marked those were from industry. So again, when we look at the criteria, one of those is that you work with an industry partner. and they're the ones that are marking it, so they obviously look very favourably upon that. And again, they don't know what you mean, perhaps. So again, we've seen the criteria, something like SIMD, and if you put on your application, we've got 20% of our learners are in SIMD 1 to 6. You're speaking to people from business and they go, oh, that means SIMD is about the economic groups and stuff. That sounds like that's a needy school. Whereas, you know, that's not the case. So you've got to make your figures really clear about who you are impacting and what groups you're targeting. Because the people marking it are, say, not from education necessarily. There may be a few, that would be the hope, but they weren't all. So a lot of people from business. So you've got to be really clear when you're outlining what your needs are. Again, that it matches to business and to the target groups there. And again, you really got to consider how you word that. And if you're talking about SIMD groups, for example, you might well, I would certainly suggest that you put as much of an explanation about that as you can fit in the form, as well about who these learners are. If it's lower SIMD children, about who they are and what their needs are and why this is going to impact them, be as clear as possible. As I say, it's not another teacher that's marking this, so they're not going to know what you mean by, say, lower deciles, for example. So the target groups then, you can see in the screen there, and obviously if you can hit all of those, then that's more favourable again. But just because you don't hit all of them doesn't mean that it would be dismissed. So if you're in a rural area, then you're not going to be looked down on, or your grant's not going to be rejected for not targeting rural isolation if that's not something that affects your learners. So, and again, there is a part. I would be sceptical about running, say, for example, a girls' code club, because I think the evidence, the research on that from certainly the Improving Gender Balance team, Education Scotland, I think have got the research that says that doesn't necessarily impact the number of girls who will go on to study STEM careers, for example. However, if you were to focus that, you may say we're going to have 30 places in this after-school club, and we guarantee 15 of them will be girls. We will select 15 girls to take part in this. Then before we open it up to the boys who might want to apply for the places as well. So you can put things like that in there as well. And it's worth considering that, you know, are you going to get let's say a code club of 30 girls? You might not get that, but you might want to say we're going to guarantee it's a 50-50 split. And, you know, it might even be that you target and suggest that certain learners come to this. So again, if you're thinking about those high deprivation background children, you might be saying we're going to target girls who are from lower SIMD and who don't particularly enjoy digital technology. That would be the holy grail there. That would be your you know, ticking a lot of the boxes there. But again, it's about how you've identified that. So, you know, can't have sweeping statements like girls don't do digital technology in our school. They would be looking for data. So you may say we did a survey, did a Microsoft form, and we got that evaluation across the school, and we found that girls were unengaged with digital learning. So that's why we're going to run this club. It may just be that you are targeting, perhaps through PEF, you're focusing on learners who are disengaged or from, and again with the equity funding, the attainment gap, there is a lot of focus around the impact of incomes on learners. So again, if you've got that kind of data, you might want to say, you know, our school already has the figures and we know that this group of learners is not accessing it, and it happens to be, as I say, I would do your best to say as well, we've got girls in there or minority groups or you could just target high deprivation. However, if the application next to yours has got girls from a minority background who are also from a rurally deprived area, they're ticking more boxes. So think about your project and how you are going to target those groups. I say be clear about how you've identified them. Does the school have data? Have you done a survey? Have you just had conversations with some learners who are disengaged? and that they're going to then, they've said, you know, they don't like computing, it doesn't relate to something, so your project is going to relate computing to industry and careers through DYW, then you're on the right kind of track to that. Again, the last point there about I said about the activities and partnerships there. So again, the people marking this and the people funding it are from industry backgrounds mostly. So they're looking for that industry engagement in there. That could be a parent. You might have a parent in the school who fixes laptops. They might code, might work in software development. You know, whatever it is they do. But if you can make a link to somebody's career somewhere as part of this, then again, that's ticking another box there. If you can, again, obviously reaching out to the sort of partners that are involved, and you have a look at the website and see some of those partners. One of the ones about partnerships that's worth considering is Microbit support the fund, and I believe I need to go back and really read it again just to make sure I get the right thing. If I'm right, I don't think microbits are deductible from your budget. So I think Microbit donate, if I've still got that correct, unless that's changed. It was certainly the case last year. If you were to apply for £1,000 and let's say 20 microbits, the 20 microbits wouldn't have to be in the budget because they get them for free. So there's sometimes, you know, you can apply for extra money and you can get the microbits as well as for your project. So I would definitely think about where you could use microbits in your project. So if you want to do an after-school coding club and use microbits to do some physical computing, that's again ticking more boxes because it's working with one of their partners directly, and they don't essentially pay for the microbits. It doesn't have to be part of the funding. You want to be able to promote industry and engagement. So again, a great opportunity with DYW there, but it's got to be extra. And I think that's where they see this, is it's not embedded in your school curriculum. It is something else. It's the added value. So they're not interested, and it won't win you the funding to say we've got DYW all through our school and it links to literacy. Not what they're looking for. They're looking for you to link technology to real world context in an after school setting. So it's going to be something above and beyond. It's something that your learners won't get in the classroom. So it's not, we'd like money to buy iPads and we can use the iPads for literacy and French and PE. Not what the fund is for. If you were, for example, I think it's in one of the impact reports, there was a successful bid, I think it was from Inverclyde, about iPads, about creating a kind of transportable case of iPads that could be moved between a cluster of schools to support a very particular part of learning. But again, an iPad, you've got to have a real think. It's a hard one to get, say, something like an iPad, because why not a laptop? Why not a Chromebook? What does it do that's different? So it's got to really relate to, again, those real world skills and the pathways there. In terms of the application form, and it's just got boxes, you put in these, and I'd say that the bits, again, I'm going to go through them. I am going to read a bit from the screen, but it's that part, you know, again, that the bits that I picked up from marking these, measurable. How are you going to know? And you have to set that out. I'm going to do an evaluation before the project, and I will do an evaluation in the middle of it, and I'll do an evaluation at the end of it. You might even want to put in, if it's a 12-week project, that you're going to do an evaluation every 3 weeks. So that if it's going well, you can develop it, and if it's not going well, you can make changes to it and improve it for the last number of weeks. So think about that as much as possible. I just wouldn't leave anything out, because I say, I certainly found in my experience, it was the further education ones were very watertight, and they're probably written by someone that's their role or their function in their team. So again, realistic targets, you know, I'm going to get 20 microbits to do a code club, and I'm going to get these girls to engage with it. I'm going to measure the impact before and after, and you know, I want these girls who said they didn't engage to say that they now like coding and it was more fun than they thought it was. So something realistic, not that they're going to, you know, send a rocket to the moon. it's going to be something that is again tangible that you can do. And again, I think as well with the outcome part, again, looked on more favourably when it is sustainable. So it's not, I want £5,000 for George Milliken to come in and run a code club, and I need to pay him £5,000, but I'll take 20 microbits off you for free, and then George will disappear as well. So I would put in as part of your outcomes there about, are you going to engage families to support this? Is it just one person in the school doing it? Or are you going to have 2 or 3 members of staff in the school that are going to support this? If there is a bit of learning there, again, how's that going to be sustained? So if it's you're the computing whiz and you're going to run this project, but let's say, Pam's supporting me with it, but how am I going to develop Pam at the same time so that if I don't run it next year, we don't just have 20 microbits? So you might want to include, again, part of the outcomes is about your staff as well. So I'm the person that's leading it. I'm confident, but I'm going to support my 2 colleagues. They're going to just support me run the club, and I'm going to show them a wee bit about coding. And the hope is that they would be able to run that as well next year, or that they're going to, you could even, again, put in something there about, I'm going to run this coding club for 6 weeks, and I'm going to show my 2 colleagues how it's done, and they're going to see the resources and how the microbits work, etc. And they've already committed to running a similar project for younger learners or learners with additional needs or whatever else it is that's in your school community. So you could have a think about, again, the outcomes are not just for the learners. I think about how it's sustainable and how that's going to be used going forward. The last thing anybody wants to do is give you a box of computers that get used for this one club and then just go into the general school circulation. So again, how are they going to learn about it? So again, that should be up our street. That should be the easy bit for learning and teaching. But again, think about your audience. If somebody's there from business, they work in a bank, and they're there because they're partnering as part of the fund, and they can bring that idea of industry to the classroom. But do they get the classroom part of it? So again, I would be clear about, we'd have a lesson, they'll have a chance to tinker with it. And I keep using microbits and code clubs. That might not be a project at all. But whatever it is, thinking about how, explaining how they learn and how that's going to happen. How are you going to, again, bread and butter for us as educators, assessment. I'm going to get them to do a wee quiz at the end of the lesson, and that will let me know that they've understood what they were doing. And they're going to have a project perhaps at the end of it that they've built over a number of weeks. So again, how are you going to get them involved in it as well? So is that, I saw one that said I'm going to hand out flyers. But again, that, for me, what you could put a flyer, you could put a newsletter in every school bag, but how does that get those children involved? So again, are you targeting them? Are you picking children at a lower SIMD, or are you targeting children that are from a minority background and saying you would like to give you first choice in this, and how you dress that up, whether you're telling them their first choice, again, however that works for your school and its community. So, but again, outline that as much as you can. I'm going to select learners who I think will benefit from this, and they will be invited, and then spaces would be filled up based on need or want. So again, don't just say I'm going to put a flyer on the school bags, because that doesn't involve or engage anybody. That's just telling people it's there. And again, the last thing I want to do is give you funding for a club that nobody signs up to because all you did was put newsletters in. So I feel I'm getting really pedantic about it, but again, you just don't want to miss any wee bits out. Partnerships and industry, again, have a look at the website and see the kind of people that are linking. And again, you could even reach out to those companies. I know one of the ones we looked at last year was about has it went ahead, the satellite project, I think, in the Clyde. They're going to build satellites on the Clyde somewhere. And one of the projects says that they'd been in touch and that they had linked, and they were going to do some input. So that company that was going to build satellites were going to do some input on how satellites work, and then they were going to make wee microbits, I think send the microbits up on wee bottle rockets and find out how far they flew. So again, much scaled down from the industry, but they had that link there, that they were then talking about satellites. The learners have found out all about satellites, and that's going to be a potential viable career if you live near the Clyde. But then it was a simple club of building bottle rockets, programming a microbit and putting them up into the air and measuring how far they flew with the kind of accelerometer stuff. So a dead simple activity, but you've just got to make sure that it is clearly linked to the partners there. Again, if you can link to families as well, I would be suggesting is a huge one. Can you bring a couple of family helpers in, some adults from home that could support this? Again, thinking about especially linking to that female or minority role model, or again, even if you don't, perhaps you've identified that families from lower income or ethnic minority groups don't engage in the school the same way. But if you can get some of those parents to come into the school to support this, then you are, again, they're coming in as a role model to the children that are from those similar backgrounds, but also you're perhaps developing their skills and their confidence in it. So again, as many links as possible. What you want this to be is absolutely bulletproof. My thinking, I think when Pam and I spoke about this, is going to be like, let's say there's like 30 applications from Renfrewshire, and they've really got to give out 30 because they're all so good. That would be the kind of the big win. So what you don't want to do is just think, I've only got half an hour to write this because I'm going to do it in April 21st, and skip some of these wee details that might be the difference between getting it or not getting it. So as tight as you can make it. And again, outline the plan, the number of plans we looked at that were like, week 1, we'll do an intro. Week 2, I'll let them code in the computer. Week 3, they can put it in a microbit. And week 4, they'll do an evaluation. And, as much as you can, as many details. I'm going to use this resource. So I'm going to use something like, again, microbits. I'm going to use the MakeBit or MakeCode microbit website, and it's got lesson plans and activities. I'm going to use that. And the key personnel, I'm in charge of this, but Pam or Don will be supporting me. What's the money being spent on? So again, don't say, we're buying spheros, 1,200 quid. You might want to put in there, spheros are £100 each, and to buy 10 of them would cost me 1,200, but in actual fact, there's a set from XMA for, you get 12 for 1,000 if you buy them all in. So again, show that you've researched that and you've budgeted it. You're not just throwing their money at the first thing that you see. You've weighed that up, and again, that's going to help make your case. If you're saying, I've researched this and I've found the best deal, I know where I can get this from, and you've looked at that. And again, set your milestones. So by week 2, everybody will have attended the club once, and they will have done the first 3 parts of the program. They will have coded this, and this, or they will have designed a plan for a satellite, and that will be drawn up. So again, stuff that we should be really good at as teachers, that we do all the time. Just don't skimp on the detail. And the last bit, again, what's that evaluation going to look like? So again, make sure it's detailed, and you've got who the learner is, what they enjoyed, what they think they take forward. There's a question about industry on there. I learned this about work. I think I could do this in the future. That's what you want them to say. Their bit, I guess, they're looking for is to be able to say, because the children did your project, they now see where this links to industry and a career pathway. That's the point of the fund, and that's what they want to see in that evaluation. So don't put an evaluation on it, Disney. Make that link to sustainability, girls, minority, industry. If you are a rural school, capitalise on that. So, we're quite close to the countryside, and I kind of see the example you always kind of hear banded as the robot egg collectors. And they've got a wee robot that drives about and lifts eggs for the chicken run. Link to that. Say that this is important for our rural setting, but make sure that the evaluation gives the learners an opportunity to state that, because that's what they want the children to have learned about, is where the industry link is. So again, just don't miss it. So that's all the bits with the Digital Xtra Fund. I can show you the website there, but you can have a look in your own time. There's the impact report as well, and I'll look at the sort of things that So you're looking for numbers as well. But again, if you've only got, if you think this club of 5 children is really going to have an impact on them, that's fine. It doesn't have to be a club of 30. But again, if you can have a club of 30 or multiple age ranges, then that's something. Or you could put that in as part of your next steps in your sustainability. Once I've run this for this group of 10, my plan would be to run it again each term for a different group. But perhaps these pupils who did it will come back as kind of young mentors. They'll come and support the club as well. And then it becomes sustainable because they are pupils leading it. So think about all the things that you, again, we're doing all the time. And again, so you can see there again, donate microbits along with it. So it was, there's an idea, some of the bits you might want to cover. So getting wearable technology, the creativity. It doesn't just have to be tech. I know it does say computing and technologies, but again, things like digital creativity. So, you know, let's say you wanted iPads because you were going to do a music project using GarageBand. Just make sure it is watertight. That would be fine, as long as it links to you. If you can get somebody that's got a recording studio or a musician or somebody to come in and support that, that's a lot closer to industry than we just wanted the iPads to make music for this club, but then we're going to use the iPads in the school generally. So that's, as long as it's robust. They say there's about robots, and they're using the makey. You know, in fact, there's a microbit. Yep, they've got it plugged into the banana as part of the circuit. And this one again, robots. So robots are always favourable. Thinking about the partners again, so you can see a Marty there. So if you know Marty, is it robotics? I think that are one of the sponsors. If you're able to link to that, that's something that's worth considering. So there's some of the partners you can see there. What I would say as well is one of the projects I think everybody loved there last time was, it was for one of the colleges in the islands, one of the islands, and they worked with all the primary schools, but what they wanted to do is buy a printer, 3D printer, and that's what they're using in more and more remote and rural areas. So on that island, rather than waiting for parts to be shipped to repair fishing boats, they're 3D printing some of those parts now. And that's done in collaboration with the college. But what the college then were going to do was use the 3D printer as part of a project with the neighbouring primary schools. So it was linked from primary schools through to further education and to the local industry. So not just a random bit of industry, something local to them, where those learners are more likely to go and work. So again, if you can think of something that's in your local area, that always adds a wee bit to as well. So you can read those and see what they went for. And again, if you look at the website, you'll find all the information that you need. You've got big, long statements to support. So again, just make sure you read it. You go through all the bits that I've spoken about, and I know I keep going back to the same stuff, but again, you would be amazed reading these applications. Wee bits of information that people leave out, and it would be a shame to just miss out a wee bit of information that's scuppered an otherwise really good project. So again, there's all the bits that I've put in the slides. Have a read at it and make sure you've gone through it. I think they're quite happy to support you if you want to get in touch with Digital Xtra and see if there's anything that you're missing. And I think the form, if you look at it, the form will roughly look, I don't think there should be any surprises there. Big bit to read at the start. So again, that's what
the message there is, George, make sure you read the big bit at the start.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely go back and read that. As you can see here, the wee bit worth mentioning as well, how they pay the installments there, you can see. So it might be that some of the funding is released at the start and some of it's released further through. Definitely go back and read about that. I can't remember where that impacted. I think it depends on the size of the budget of the project, how they release some of it. So some of it will be given to you before the project starts. But again, if you need to buy £5,000 worth of devices, then you maybe can't start the project until you get it. So I think, again, they would be looking for that this project can still go ahead. So just double check, go back and have a look at that. That was that seemed to affect some of the projects, but not all of the projects when we looked at them last year. So definitely I'll relook at that as well and just see if there's anything that I'm missing about that from last year. But that one about when the money gets released, and again, I think it's that bit they don't want to give you the full £5,000, and it turns out your project doesn't go ahead because it's really hard to get that back. So I think they're almost looking for you're able to set this up. So that could even be, again, think about that in your planning. I'm going to start the project, I'm going to get the evaluations done, and that's going to take me 1 to 4 weeks to get that done. And then I'm going to starting the actual club might be the midpoint of the project, if that makes sense. And again, that means you're getting most of the funding and time for the project to actually start. So think about your time isn't just the club, it's the whole project. So if you've got lots of groundwork to do, if you've got training to get done, that might be a 4-week code club, but it's going to take you 12 weeks to plan and deliver and evaluate that. So count your full set of 12 weeks. So that's where that funding part comes in. So it's not just when the code club starts that you get the funding. You can get the funding at the start to do your training, buy your equipment, train your staff up in that. And then again, the next set of money will come in. So it might be that you don't need some of the devices or some of the resources or paying for an outside person to come in and support that. But again, the outside person being paid doesn't always fit in with the sustainability either. So again, just you've got your key dates there again about when the evaluations and things have got to, when it gets evaluated and when you would find out it's going to start. So again, running a code club in the middle of May, dependent on this fund, isn't going to work because the money won't be awarded until later on, but it has got to be spent by a point as well. So yeah, lots of reading, as Pam says. Make sure you go through and read all this. This is the detail on top of the bits that I've said, but hopefully what I'm telling you, you're just seeing the same bits coming back in here again. And again, just don't let your application down by skipping over. So big long application, but this is all information. When you actually get down to the, it tells you again about the scoring here. So again, is it complete? Partly complete. And again, that's the guidance I've opened, isn't it? The actual application form. It's not going to open up in my browser, I don't think. So I don't think you'll see this just now. Let me come back to the, I'm just going to change my presentation here so you see the whole screen. The application form, nothing I don't think beyond anyone at all. It's just, I keep saying the detail to it, don't miss anything. So again, your general details, who you're working with, and again, roughly outline it. But again, the you're limited to 200 words there. So it's looking for an outline of the whole project, but then a summary of it as well, which I felt was very much the same thing. But the summary is almost what the activities are, but the outline of the project is what you're going to do, what you're hoping to achieve, how that's all going to come together. So again, a wee bit of wordplay, and again, you can just see what are your objectives, how's it tying to this. So that's good to see cyber resilience has been added there as well. And if it doesn't meet that, that's fine, but I would suggest you meet anything that's in the application form. And then when it comes down to here, so again, specifically. So again, if it doesn't meet that, that's fine. You can leave that blank. But as I said, you've got every chance of getting it if you're meeting all of these. But what you don't want is to have blank spaces. So if your project doesn't meet rural deprivation, then think about it. Is there somebody in your school that maybe does live a wee bit more remote? So and that's fine. If your initiative doesn't meet that, that's absolutely. If you live in, you're in Paisley Town Centre, you're the kind of school nearest to that, you're not going to be rural classification. So that's just a no. Definitely make sure you've hit the deprivation and the underrepresented groups. Then don't have 1 out of 3. If you can't get 3 out of 3, have 2 out of 3 at the minimum. And again, just asking you who's involved, tells you everything you have to include there. So I'll stop going through it. I don't think we need to keep going backwards and forwards through that, but I hope that's enough kind of just making you aware, leave yourself time for it. Don't say I'm going to wait to the end of the Easter holidays and then I'm going to fill this in. You know, get it done if you can before. And I know, again, not the best time. People are just starting to go back to their settings. A lot of transition again, but just don't be leaving things out. It's my one. I keep saying it, but you'd be amazed the number of things people leave out. Brilliant projects. Read one about night vision and monitoring animals in the local environment. Absolutely fantastic learning. Just didn't tell us who the personnel were, didn't tell what the evaluation was going to be, and it's going to be marked down. Doesn't matter how good it is. So, Andy, get any questions about Digital Xtra then?
I was just going to throw in there, George, I don't know if anybody has had a successful application in the past and if they've got any comments about it, because obviously there has been funding awarded to Renfrewshire, but I'm not aware of anybody on the call. So that was my first one. And then to say, yeah, now's your time to ask George questions, given that he knows the process so well.
Well, I've done an application, Pam. It wasn't successful, but I can mirror what George is saying there. Give yourself time, because I think come back to it with fresh eyes was a good thing for us, because you realise after you've done it, maybe sat in it for a wee couple of days and then come back, looked at it, you realise some of the gaps that you've probably missed by yourself. I know that's not the best place because I wasn't successful, but it was it taught me something about that process, so it was good either way.
Me too, Ross, and actually the thing that I know with that application we didn't have enough was the evaluation in it.
Absolutely. So if we did it again, we know that now, and that's, yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else got any comments or questions to ask George while we're here? George, are you going to drop that presentation into our DL team?
Yep.
And I need to also make sure I add Dawn, I'll add you to the team as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Pam.
Yeah, there's Alistair saying they didn't get the funding either. Yeah.
And do you know, as I say, I looked at you've got brilliant projects on there, and you're no detailed as enough about who the staff were or how you do, or it's probably been one wee thing. So, and again, I'd be happy to. I don't want to commit. I don't know if I can commit to reading every application, but again, if people want to maybe do a bit like we did with Digital Schools Award and have go away and think about a project and what that would be, and come back. I don't know if there's some value, Pam, perhaps in doing almost a kind of central thing about if people.
I was just thinking that, George.
A couple of kind of key, you know, like I want to apply for microbits, then there's maybe a few folk that want to write them together. And again, I would say put in for a cluster application, put in for a school application, put in for a Renfrewshire application, and as many chances as possible. We'll probably start looking through it. So why is there so many for Renfrewshire? But I think as many chances as possible.
Yeah, I was just thinking a bit like we did with the DSA award. I'm just wondering if it's worth creating a space in our team and saying, you know, having that space to drop in initial thoughts and ideas so that then people can connect with each other to say, exactly as you said, George, am I doing microbit? Am I doing a scratch club? Am I doing whatever?
Pull those again, your evaluations and things, you'll pull it together. And there's always as well that wee bit in terms of sustainability. If you're going to do it as part of a cluster and there's 3 or 4 schools are going to benefit from that, and staff in 3 or 4 schools are going to work together and train each other, you know, ticking more and more of those boxes. So yeah, definitely worth that. And again, for the secondaries, if you can think about how you're going to engage either different departments, so the computing teacher and the science teachers are going to work together on this, or how you're going to engage with your primary school as well, or colleges, university, or employers, or whatever else. So think about who that partner is. It's not just the industry. So if you're going to get train your 4th years up to then go and teach that to the local primary 7s for a transition day, you know, that's more boxes ticked again. So as many links and as many transitions and partners and things as you can think of. But if nobody's got anything in particular just now, happy to move on and talk a wee bit about Stream. And again, at any point, Don, just feel free to come in and so I'm probably just going to show your videos to be honest. So so yeah, let us know how you feel about Digital Xtra and what you're thinking about. Happy to support with that and see again if there's wee bits and pieces.